The Lekwa Local Municipality in Mpumalanga has been fined 70 million rand for failing to stop sewage from flowing into the Vaal River near Standerton. The fine imposed by the Standerton Regional Court is described as the highest in South Africa for environmental crimes. We find out why now with Green Scorpion's Environmental Management Inspector Maanda Alidzulwe. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this afternoon. When you visited the municipality, what were you met with?
Thank you very much.
Mr. Alidzulwe, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. Could you kindly repeat the question, please?
So when you visited the municipality, which has since been fined, what were you met with?
Thank you. I would say it was a situation that one would not have anticipated. Horror does not begin to explain it. But having dealt with similar cases, it was one of those that you would find yourself thinking to yourself, would I really be content? Would I really find myself staying in this kind of an environment if I was one of the decision makers? Thank you.
What did the decision makers do? And so you got there and you found that they were not complying with their license agreement or with their license conditions. Which were what?
In this case, there were two aspects that we investigated. One was the wastewater treatment works and the infrastructure itself due to sewer spillages that had a long history. I think we started this whole journey from 2015. The other aspect of it was the waste in terms of the general waste and the landfill side. So those were the two aspects that we were looking at in terms of our investigation. And now, with the landfill, you have a situation where there is a waste management license that was issued to Lekwa. And obviously, with the other side of things, it's the network, the infrastructure as a whole, because you've got pump stations that are not working. You've got a wastewater treatment plant that is somewhat working partially, sometimes not. And then you've got a problem of manholes that are consistently overflowing to a point where you have rivers of sewer, to put it lightly.
And what is it that the relevant authorities told you in terms of why the situation was a horror show as you described it? Initially,
in terms of the enforcement, as environmental management inspectors, we are guided by the National Environmental Management Act. So you would want to engage in an administrative enforcement kind of a way where you will issue notices. Then you would have your compliance notices, you would have your directives to the establishment itself to try and open up that channel where you can engage and then try and see what would be best in terms of resolving these issues. That happened, and I have to also mention the fact that it was not only environmental affairs as a provincial department. We also had the intervention of the National Department of Environmental Affairs, which is the DFFE. We had integrated efforts together with the Department of Water and Sanitation. They were obviously executing their mandate as much as we were doing ours on the side. And we also had the District Municipality in assistance as well. Now, the situation that unfolded, you have these decision makers or people in power that are supposed to be prioritizing service delivery and or human life and the protection of the environment. But when we engaged with them, the first thing that would be put forward, it would be a situation where we would call pleading poverty in terms of the finances or lack thereof in terms of the infrastructure dilapidation and everything else. The first thing that would come across would be, you would be told that there is no money or there are no funds for such activities.
What is the direct threat to communities? Because this is as the country is struggling to find the source of the cholera outbreak. And when you have these kinds of situations which are not ideal living conditions, they are breeding grounds for other things to develop health-wise, which are not in the best interest of the community. And so what has been the immediate threat to the community of Lekwa?
I will put it this way. Remember, I'll give you a scenario. One might be staying at what we call suburbs in town, in the townships, and in that immediate, you might not necessarily see the need for you to preserve that water course, to protect it, because maybe in the immediate you are not necessarily utilizing that water course for water consumption purposes. But you have to now bear in mind there's a user downstream. That user primarily depends on that water course. In a form of now, whether it's a community, the rural communities, and the farmers as well. So the very same food security that we need to be able to guarantee, it's now affected because of the very same polluted, contaminated water. It's going downstream to irrigate the same crops, to feed the same animals that we are consuming when we go to these supermarkets to buy the produce. In another aspect of that, you've got a situation where the community that I'm referring to, that is downstream, that is primarily relying on these water courses or these resources. They are consuming the water from that very same polluted and contaminated water course, which then means the very same entity that is supposed to be protecting these people and the communities, it's actually the very same one that is perpetrating their downfall, in a way that now we have a situation where you've got your waterborne diseases, your airborne diseases, your vector-borne diseases, to a point where people are now living in conditions that are inhumane, because now we're forcing them to align themselves to those conditions. You've got respiratory conditions that are coming as a result of this situation. You've got skin conditions. We're talking about communities where we went and interviewed people, and they thought it was the norm, that they have actually adjusted to the living conditions that are not even supposed to be anywhere near where a human should be living and how we should be treating each other.
And so the 70 million rand fine by the courts, what then is going to happen? Because you have stakeholders who are telling you that, well, there's a lack of budget, and so we're not able to maintain infrastructure, we're not able to upgrade infrastructure. And so where they get the 70 million rand from stands to be seen, but will it then go back into fixing the problem?
Thank you. I think it's imperative to mention the fact that the money that we sought to get from the municipality, it's mainly for purposes of giving it back to the municipality so that they can utilize the funds to do exactly what they ought to have done in the first place. Which means now the only difference is that we now bring it back with a court order with conditions to say you do 1, 2, and 3 and make sure that it's done within these time frames. Failure thereof, then you will have the court to answer to, which makes it easier for us to actually have monitoring mechanisms in place, because if we leave it be, then it's futile. We're just wasting state resources.
Absolutely. Green Scorpions Environmental Management Inspector Maanda Alidzulwe, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.